It's hard to say. If they do add a veteran, I think it would be a younger guy that will have some upside potential and could do something for them down the road. And if they do something like that, and I wrote this in one of my stories recently, that, if they bring in another guy, then I think they would be open to trading Dylan Gabriel.
Hold on. Did she just confirm what everyone's been speculating about? Kay Cabot, one of the most connected insiders in Cleveland sports, just let something slip that changes everything we thought we knew about the Browns quarterback situation. And if you caught that detail, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
In that scenario, then you maybe go out and find another developmental guy. Maybe you draft, a Drew Eller or a Cade Klubnik or whatever, somebody from a later round in this draft. It's hard to say. If they do add a veteran, I think it would be a younger guy.
These are major reports coming out that, yes, Dylan Gabriel was about to kick rocks, bro, because we know how the Browns get down. They went into the season with 4 quarterbacks last year, and it looked like they ain't scared of getting 2 new ones. And if that is the case, Dylan Gabriel, see you, player.
There it is. Dylan Gabriel is on the trading block. Not speculation, not rumor. The Browns are actively open to moving him if they bring in another quarterback. And here's what makes this fascinating. Gabriel was their 3rd round pick just last year. Teams don't give up on 3rd round quarterbacks after one season unless something significant happened behind closed doors. So what did they see that made them willing to cut bait this quickly?
Hey, we all know Titus Howard was already traded for by Andrew Berry, and it got me to thinking, how aggressive is Andrew Berry going to be in the trade market as we kick this new league year off? What do you think?
I think he'll seek to make a couple of trades. He loves to wheel and deal, and I'm sure he's working the phones right now. I'm sure he did that all throughout the combine, talking to as many other GMs as he possibly could, trying to come up with deals for the Cleveland Browns.
Andrew Berry loves to wheel and deal. That's not just commentary, that's his established pattern. Since taking over as general manager in January 2020, Berry has been one of the most aggressive traders in the NFL. He's made major moves at the deadline, he's traded up in drafts, he's flipped picks for veterans. The man operates like he's playing Madden franchise mode with trade override turned on. But here's where it gets interesting. Kay mentions he's working the phones right now, talking to other GMs throughout the combine. That was the first week of March 2025, which means while everyone's focused on the draft, Berry's building a completely different roster through backdoor conversations.
First of all, what was your initial reaction to seeing that, another elite pass rush coming?
Now, many people was insinuating this Max Crosby trade could somehow throw things off in Cleveland for them rebuilding their offensive line. We don't know what the game plan was for them moving forward with rebuilding their offensive line, but a lot of people in the NFL circles is saying that Matt Crosby trade might have just stone-railed any offensive plan they had moving forward.
The Max Crosby trade. March 2025, the Raiders sent their defensive end to the Lions for what reportedly included multiple first-round picks. And according to Kay, some people in NFL circles think this trade might have derailed Cleveland's entire offensive line rebuilding plan. Think about that logic for a second. The Browns are trying to rebuild their offensive line through free agency and the draft. Then suddenly one of the league's elite pass rushers lands in their own division. Every offensive line plan they had just got more expensive because now they're not just building for competence, they're building to survive twice-a-year matchups against Crosby.
Geez, if you can get that for Max Crosby, what can we get for Miles? I just don't think that they were, thinking along those lines. But once again, you never know. I mean, I highly doubt that they would even field a call of that nature. But, who knows? Maybe they would at least listen just to hear what somebody might.
But watch her response carefully. She doesn't think the Browns are considering trading Miles Garrett just because Crosby fetched a massive haul. And that tells you something about the organization's mindset right now. They're committed to Garrett as their cornerstone. First-round picks aren't flashing through Andrew Berry's eyes when he thinks about Miles, which actually makes the Dylan Gabriel situation even more telling. They'll hold on to their star defensive end, but they're willing to move a quarterback they drafted 10 months ago? That's not just roster management, that's a verdict on Gabriel's future.
As we kind of get to that point?
Well, Andrew likes to go into the draft not having to draft any particular position. Now, this year, the draft just so happens to match up with the Browns' needs. It's very strong in offensive tackles and offensive linemen, and it's very strong in wide receivers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with a wide receiver and an offensive lineman, or two of receivers and two offensive linemen in the first 5 picks or something.
Here's where Andrew Berry's draft strategy gets complicated. He likes going into the draft without being forced to target any specific position. He wants flexibility. He wants to take the best player available regardless of need. But this year, the draft actually lines up perfectly with Cleveland's needs. Strong offensive tackle class, deep wide receiver group. Mary Kay says she wouldn't be surprised if the Browns take 2 receivers and 2 offensive linemen in their first 5 picks. That's how well this draft matches their roster holes. Except there's always a curveball with Berry. Just when you think he's going to zig, he zags. Last year, everyone expected offense early. He took Carson Swashinger, a safety, and it worked out. So don't be shocked if he throws everyone off again and goes defense high despite the offensive needs.
You know, I'm not really sure. I really don't know. I wish I could say. I mean, I guess it feels to me like.
You know what these tight ends are so relaxed about? Prostate cancer screenings. They've learned there's a simple, finger-free blood test.
Find out if a PSA blood test is right for you at Relax. It's a bloodtest.com.
Maybe he's not coming back just based on his reaction when we talked to him about retiring at the end of the season, and he came to tears. That leads me to believe that he knew, that this was probably going to be his last season. But sometimes when you put a little space between the end of the season and then your body starts to feel good again, and the new coach comes in and you see some possibilities, maybe you change your mind a little bit. But we'll have to see, and I'm sure we'll hear something sooner than later.
Joel Bitonio. The veteran offensive lineman's retirement decision deadline was coming up in March 2025, and Mary Kay admits she doesn't really know which way he's leaning. But then she reveals something crucial. When they talked to Bitonio at the end of the season about potentially retiring, he came to tears. That reaction tells you everything. Players don't get emotional about leaving unless they've already made the decision internally. When you're still debating, you stay composed. Analytical. When you've already decided you're done and someone asks you about it directly, that's when the emotion hits. Mary Kay tries to walk it back a bit, suggesting maybe some time off and a new coach could change his mind. But that initial instinct, that's probably right. Bitonio knew this was his last season. His body knew it, his mind knew it, and that emotional response confirmed it.
Are there any guys that you've heard that's linked to the Cleveland Browns or the Browns might be interested in that's outside of the quarterback position when it comes to free agents?
Honestly, no. They are playing it so close to the vest that I haven't heard anything. And I will be making a lot of phone calls this weekend because sometimes you want to wait until the tags are all done. You want to wait until the trades are kind of underway. You want to see who's getting tendered and all that kind of stuff. So once all that stuff is taken care of for the most part, then you can kind of dig in and see who's left about to hit the market. So I don't really know right now, but I would be looking at receivers and offensive linemen and just kind of having my thoughts and calls put there.
The Browns are playing everything close to the vest when it comes to free agency targets. Mary Kay admits she hasn't heard anything about specific players they're pursuing outside the quarterback position, and that's actually strategic. She mentioned she'll be making calls this weekend because the smart time to dig is after all the franchise tags are placed, after the restricted free agent tenders go out, after the early trades shake loose. Once you see who's actually hitting the market, then you can figure out who's pursuing whom. But the fact that she's specifically looking at receivers and offensive linemen tells you where the Browns' focus will be. That's not speculation. That's reading the obvious needs and connecting them to the available market.
Well, I think they will look at them all very closely, and they will continue to do their diligence. But I think that if they draft a quarterback this year, it will be more of a developmental guy and not somebody that is designed to come in here and take the place of Shedeur Sanders. I think they're really excited about Shedeur. They've told us that they're excited.
And here's where everything comes together. Mary Kay's talking about the Browns' approach to drafting a quarterback in 2025, and she says something revealing. If they draft a quarterback this year, it'll be more of a developmental guy, not somebody designed to take the place of Shedeur Sanders. Wait, Shedeur Sanders? She just said Shedeur Sanders is their quarterback. Not if they get Shedeur, not should they draft Shedeur. She said the developmental quarterback wouldn't be designed to replace Shedeur Sanders, speaking about him like he's already on the roster. That's not a slip of the tongue from a casual observer. That's Mary Kay Cabot, who's covered the Browns for decades, who has direct access to the front office, who knows exactly what she's saying when she's on camera. She just confirmed Shedeur Sanders to Cleveland. Let's break down what just happened here, because this is bigger than just one quarterback prospect going to one team. This is about how information actually leaks in the NFL, and why you have to pay attention to how insiders phrase things, not just what they explicitly say. Mary Kay Cabot doesn't do accidental confirmations. When you've been covering a team as long as she has, when you've built the relationships she's built with front office personnel, you know exactly which words to use and which words to avoid. If Shedeur Sanders to Cleveland was just speculation, she would have said if they draft Shedeur, or assuming they get Shedeur, or should Shedeur fall to them at 6. She didn't say any of that. She spoke about him as their quarterback, present tense, established fact. And this fits everything else we've been seeing. The Browns have been doing extensive work on Shedeur throughout the pre-draft process. They've had him in for visits, they've done private workouts, they've sent coaches and executives to watch him at Colorado. That's not due diligence on a guy you're casually interested in. That's building a relationship with your future franchise quarterback. Think about the Dylan Gabriel situation in this context. Why would the Browns be open to trading a quarterback they drafted in the 3rd round last year? Because they know they're getting Shedeur Sanders at pick 6. Gabriel was always a developmental backup, maybe a future bridge starter. But when you're about to draft a guy like Shedeur, who's pro-ready from day one, who's been coached by Deion Sanders and played in high-pressure situations at Colorado, you don't need a developmental 3rd rounder taking up a roster spot. The timeline makes sense too. Andrew Berry is working the phones at the Combine in early March, trying to find trade partners. The draft is in late April. That gives him 6 weeks to find a team that needs a young quarterback, that has a mid-round pick to offer, that's willing to take a chance on Gabriel's potential. And there will be teams interested. Gabriel has the physical tools, he just needs the right situation in coaching. Cleveland isn't that situation anymore because they're about to draft his replacement. Now let's talk about what this means for Shedeur himself. He's walking into a complicated situation in Cleveland. The Browns went through 4 quarterbacks last season. 4. They started the year with Deshaun Watson, who struggled with injuries and performance issues. They cycled through backups, none of whom provided stability. The offensive line was a disaster, giving up pressure on nearly 40% of dropbacks. The receiving core was inconsistent outside of Amari Cooper, who's now getting older. But here's what Shedeur has going for him. Kevin Stefanski is still the head coach, and Stefanski won Coach of the Year in 2020 by getting the Browns to the playoffs with Baker Mayfield. He knows how to scheme around quarterback limitations and maximize strengths. Todd Monken is the offensive coordinator, and he's one of the most creative play callers in football. If anyone can design an offense that protects a rookie quarterback while letting him show his arm talent, it's Monken, and the Browns are clearly committed to fixing the offensive line. Mary Kay mentioned they're looking at multiple offensive linemen in the first 5 picks of the draft. That 2025 draft class is loaded with tackle prospects, minus guys like Kelvin Banks from Texas, Will Campbell from LSU, Wyatt Millum from West Virginia. If Cleveland can land 2 of those guys in the first 3 rounds, suddenly Shedeur has real protection for the first time any Browns quarterback has had in years. The receiving situation is also about to improve. Jerry Jeudy is already on the roster after being traded from Denver. If they add another receiver or 2 in the draft, and this class has legitimate talent with guys like Travis Hunter, Tayroa McMillan, Isaiah Bond, Shedeur could have a legitimate supporting cast. Not elite, but functional. Enough to let him operate without having to be perfect on every throw. What's interesting is how this compares to other recent quarterback situations. When the Bears drafted Caleb Williams first overall in 2024, everyone talked about the pressure and expectations. When the Commanders took Jaden Daniels second, same story. But Shedeur going 6th overall to Cleveland? That's actually a better situation in some ways, because the expectations are different. Nobody's expecting him to immediately transform the franchise. Nobody's expecting playoffs year 1. The pressure is lower, which means he has more room to develop without being labeled a bust if he struggles early. And make no mistake, he probably will struggle early. Most rookie quarterbacks do, even the talented ones. The NFL is faster, the defenses are more complex, the margin for error is smaller, but if the Browns are patient and hiring Stefanski long-term suggests they're trying to build stability, Shedeur has the talent to develop into a legitimate franchise quarterback. The real question is whether Cleveland's front office and fan base will give him that time. This is a city that's been desperate for quarterback stability since Bernie Kosar retired in 1993. They've cycled through 32 starting quarterbacks since then. 32. Every single one arrived with hope and left with disappointment. The pressure to finally get it right is enormous, even if the explicit expectations are tempered. But here's what gives me confidence in this situation. The Browns are building around Shedeur before he even arrives. They're not drafting him and hoping the pieces fall into place. They're actively reconstructing the offensive line, adding weapons, keeping the coaching staff intact. That's how you set up a rookie quarterback for success. That's how you avoid the mistakes that ruin so many other prospects. So when Kay Cabot says Shedeur Sanders is their quarterback, when she speaks about him like it's already decided, believe her. She's not speculating. She's not guessing. She's telling you what the Browns have already decided internally, what they've already committed to, what's going to happen when they're on the clock at pick 6. And for Browns fans who've suffered through decades of quarterback disappointment, for fans who've watched first-rounders and free agent acquisitions and retreads all fail in Cleveland, this might finally be different. Not because Shedeur is guaranteed to succeed, minds nobody is, but because the organization is finally approaching the position with a real plan. They're building infrastructure, they're providing support. They're creating an environment where a talented quarterback can actually develop instead of being thrown into chaos and expected to save the franchise immediately. The Dylan Gabriel trade talks, the offensive line focus, the receiver additions, the coaching stability, it all points to one conclusion. Cleveland is going all in on Shedeur Sanders. And based on what Kay just confirmed, that decision has already been made. Now we just wait for draft night to make it official.